And tonight, Dale Anderson and Fred Van Dusen and others are going to talk with you as democracy leaders about that. But before we get started, it's important to remember that we approach this work from our faith. And that is part of what distinguishes UUSJ and UU congregations when they engage in healthy democracy work. So I would like to invite Reverend Paul Langston to open a sacred space for us, give us some contemplative words to start our considerations for the evening. Thank you, Reverend Paul.
Thank you.
Let me pin you for everyone first. There you go.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. It's good to be here this evening. I have a chalice lighting I'd like to share with you. And so I will just, without further ado, we light our chalice this evening, a symbol of hope in the rising darkness, a symbol of warmth in the gathering cold, a symbol of wisdom in times of confusion and chaos. May this light brighten us, warm us, and guide us, not only tonight, but in the days to come. So may it be. Welcome.
So good evening. I'm Dale Anderson, and I have the pleasure of sharing a few thoughts before we break out into some discussions about creation of and support of democracy action teams across our congregations tonight. I'm going to share my screen now, and I will give you a little bit of my background in just a moment once I'm sure the screen sharing is working. Try again here.
We don't see your screen right now.
Yeah, I think give it another shot here. You see this?
Yeah, we see all
Yes,
the
we
slides,
do.
Dale. Click on the first one.
We see 8 slides.
Okay.
There you go.
Got it.
All right, so I'm Dale Anderson. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalists of Sarasota.
Again, I'd like to ask folks to please mute yourselves. We don't want to have to do it for you. Thank you.
So I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalists of Sarasota, Florida. Been here about 10 years. Past president of the church. The Sarasota church is the largest UU church in Florida. And what I'd like to talk to you about tonight is the formation of democracy action teams and kind of the experience we've had. And hopefully you're going to share some of that information with us about what you're doing with your democracy action team. So just as a little bit of a background, we're all aware of the ongoing threat. I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 or 4 years talking about the threat to our democracy. And I think most everybody in our congregation understands what's going on, and the heightened fear of the loss of our democracy is quite palpable in almost all of our meetings going forward now. But we know that that threat is coming from one particular party that's using a variety of techniques to undermine our democracy from within. And one of the questions that I get frequently is, what can I do? And that's from members and community members, because we know that their goal is to create a permanent minority power as part of their plan to stay in control. We all know that when democracy ends, civil rights disappear, the rule of law is abandoned, A culture of surveillance, secret police, and citizen informers often emerges. Talent flees the nation. Women's rights are severely restricted. Political corruption is often unrestrained. Risk of war is heightened. And targeted minorities risk harassment, assault, and imprisonment and death. And we here in Florida are particularly aware of what these kinds of changes to laws can wreak on the community. So if we need some help in understanding where this is going, we can turn to the Heritage Foundation's Mandate for Leadership 2025, which was published some months ago. It's about 900 pages. And this information is from a analysis by William Cornelius in July, where he looked at these 900 pages and made the conclusion that it would create a de facto dictatorship by enhancing executive power. It would severely weaken citizens' protections with the removal of a lot of regulations that protect people. It would increase discrimination, undermine our safety net, embolden our enemies, and corrupt the rule of law. So this is a playbook that the Heritage Foundation will hand over to the next MAGA president, and it is probably what they will follow. They did a similar thing with Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, and it became his blueprint for action. If you want to read further about the concerns, I think the latest issue of Atlantic magazine, entitled "If Trump Wins," is really Atlantic writers have taken on what is the impact of a Trump pregnancy or Trump presidency on these various issues in our country, on NATO, immigration, freedom. It's worth reading this, and it's worth sharing this with other friends and neighbors about what's happening. One of the easy places to go and see what the damage would be Ann Applebaum's article on the impact on NATO if Trump were to become president. She concluded that it would be irreparable damage. The president would merely need to state that he wouldn't support countries if they were invaded, and the entire agreement would collapse. Europe would be at great risk. The alliances around the world would dissolve, and enemies would be emboldened. And I think this was published before the former president's statements about encouraging Russia to attack a European country that didn't pay its dues. So I think we have to think about the assault on our democracy in two ways. One is a gradual erosion that's occurred over time since really back in 2006, and then a more acute threats. So this is the Economist's Democracy Index ratings for the United States beginning in 2006. And you can see it's been a gradual decline in our ratings to where we've passed from a full democracy into what they refer to as a flawed democracy, a steady erosion of the indicators around our elections, our civil rights, and the rule of law. And besides that, of course, we've had the violent attack on January 6th. So we've had both an acute attack and a gradual erosion. So as we think about our democracy action teams, there's both this immediate need to protect ourselves from this upcoming election in 24, but there's also this need to kind of revise our democracy and change the trajectory of where we're going forward. So we talk about moving from the left side of this, from being a democracy agonizer, a spectator or a hand-wringer, or a cynic or an avoider, to really a democracy organizer, passionate, nonviolent activists. At one point we were talking about using the terms moving from a democracy worrier to a democracy warrior, but it sounded too violent, so we moved to agonizer to organizer. We've turned to David Pepper's book, Saving Democracy, for some of the ideas in organizing ourselves. He points out in his book that the forces of autocracy are winning, that they're using current government positions to undermine our democracy, a term that is academics use as incumbent takeover, where once in power would-be autocrats begin changing the rules gradually and until we wake up and find that many of our freedoms and our rights have disappeared. He also feels that they are competing continuously in all states, especially with the way that ALEC introduces model bills across all states and organizes their method of interference with elections and rights. They're better organized, they have a powerful propaganda network, and they have deep, deep pockets. So he shows in his book this little, this stacked comparison between Team A, the autocracy team, where the government uses dollars to enhance its positions, to Team D, which he says is the democracy side, which is made up mostly of volunteers, tends to focus on swing states periodically when elections come up. It's sporadic in its support of democracy, and it's heavily dependent upon charity. He says that the strategic adjustments we need as team democracy include recognizing that this is a long battle for democracy in the United States, that we must compete in all 50 states, that state legislatures are in the front line, that local offices have huge impact on democracy down the line, and it must be a continuous fight. He talks about redefining the teams to have a deep and continued commitment to democracy, and that accountability is everything. So oftentimes, our friends and members of our congregations ask, what can I do? What do I have that I can dedicate to help saving our democracy? And, you know, there's this list of hard work, time, intellect, financial resources, reputation and credibility, your personal network, your voice, your passion, creativity, and other skills that you can add to this, and that most people don't recognize that they have more potential political power than they perceive. So if we're going to move into asking our members to get involved with saving democracy, one of the things is that it's very difficult to do this on your own. It's emotionally difficult, and it's not the best approach, and that's why there's this need for democracy action teams to start becoming organized to support each other. So if you kind of look at UU structures around right now, we have, of course, the UUA, the association. We have the organization that's speaking here tonight, UUs for Social Justice. We all have a state action network, at least most states do, I believe. And then we all have our local congregations. And traditionally, UUs for Social Justice have focused on advocacy work around Congress. Our state action networks have focused on state legislatures, our local congregations on local government impact, and the UU supports all of the congregations. So I think it was in 2020 or 2019, the UUA passed our Democracy Uncorrupted, 2019, a statement about democracy, a statement of conscience about democracy. And beyond that, we see these democracy action teams forming across the network. So UU for Social Justice formed their Democracy Action Team in 2021. In Florida here, our state action network has formed a Democracy Action Team just this past year. And we within our own congregation are forming that kind of an action team. And this is the pivot, I think, that's occurring, moving from what our traditional roles have been around advocacy to one where we're reaching out to each other to try and enhance and get more people involved with the whole project of saving our democracy. I'm going to talk about these in a little more, but the other piece is that I think we're going to throw out the idea that members of the congregation can also form democracy action teams in their community beyond the church. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So this pivot requires some reorganization, the formation of these democracy action teams, and then more coordination among the different UU entities that are interested in social justice. So greater communication between UU for Social Justice and the state networks, greater communication with the congregations, greater communication between the congregations and their own networks, and then of course, connecting with UU around their capabilities of training, grants, and leadership. So part of this meeting tonight was formed because we had sent out a survey to, I think we sent it out to all congregations regarding whether they had a democracy action team and a few other questions related to that. We got 109 respondents, and this is kind of the pie chart of the answers to the question, do you have a democracy action team? 35% said they had a functioning DAT, as we're calling them. 10% or 9.1% said they were forming a democracy action team. And 22% were interested in forming such a entity. And when we asked in the survey what their action teams were doing, this was kind of the top 5 activities. So 84% said they were postcard or letter writing, 74% encouraging members to vote, 55% raising awareness of democracy threat, 45% texting, banking, phone banking, and 43, a little under a half, said they were encouraging participation at the polls. So the first strategy is to get a democracy action team within your congregation. And I think that probably one good example is Fred's congregation in Concord, Massachusetts. They've had a democracy action team since 2016. It meets regularly year-round, provides educational events and nationally known speakers, partners with UUSJ, UU The Vote, and other democracy organizations. It organizes an annual democracy festival, has a website, publishes a biweekly newsletter, and again, it provides and encourages a variety of voter engagement opportunities. And you can see it's that list of texting, postcarding, protesting, poll working, and lobbying. So I think that's the first thing that we ought to be encouraging all our congregations to do, is form a democracy action team. And the purpose of that is both electoral work to mobilize the vote and get people knowledgeable about the issues, but also to support legislative work, both at their local, state, and national level. And these committees should be seen as sources of education and training. They should be coordinating with the other UU social justice organizations, and particularly with UU The Vote as it gets rolled out. So you probably all received the information that the UU The Vote for 2024 is doing its launch on Thursday, March 14th at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And they have Nora Rassman is going to be the person that's kind of leading their UU The Vote activities. Each congregation, from my understanding, can look at this and decide whether they want to become a good trouble congregation and see if they can take the challenge that UU The Vote will come out with around hitting certain targets on organizing and in voter contact. So this is if you're forming or you formed a democracy action team, this is probably a meeting that your members would want to attend. But I think the second opportunity for us as members of UU Social Justice is to form or think about forming community democracy action teams. And those are a little different. Community action teams are outside of the church, are not associated with the church. They could be members of the church that go out within their local communities and form groups of 5 to 12 people in their gated communities in their neighborhood, in their condos, and bring them together with the idea of meeting periodically and getting a deeper understanding of democracy and the threats to our democracy. One such example has been, if we go on the internet and look up democracy action teams, this came up in Seattle, Washington. This is a group who say their goal is to encourage, inspire, and help each other in supporting and perpetuating our democracy by sharing information and actions, asking questions, buddying up with other members, arranging speakers and potlucks. And over time, they would share their experiences, learning, articles, blogs, and more. So these are what I'm referring to as a community democracy action team. Such a team could select or convene a lead with a leader, identify a communications person, name their team, and set regular meetings, perhaps every 2 weeks, meet in person or on Zoom. Their purpose would be to support citizens in creating a pro-democracy movement, something that is different than a pro-democracy political party. I think Tom Hartman, the radio host person, has made a big point about the difference between a political party and a political movement. And what the pro-democracy party is missing is this sense of a political movement where citizens are spontaneously taking time to step up and make their voices heard. So this is the intent of this community democracy action team would be to motivate, to provide education and training, particularly around their own local politics, which oftentimes there's a big gap in understanding of people about how their local politics work, and then to coordinate those with other pro-democracy organizations. And simple way to start such a group would be to assign reading Saving Our Democracy, create their first personal footprints, and then you'll see we have a list of 50 things you can do to help save democracy that the group could talk about in terms of how could they get engaged. The other activities of the group would be civics education, member presentations, books, articles, training, webinars, live events, and social events. Either the Congregational Democracy Action Team or a Community Democracy Action Team should also have been reaching out to all of the other pro-democracy organizations in their community, in their state. Here in Florida, we know of at least 200 pro-democracy organizations. Some of the leading ones are, of course, the League of Women Voters, the Common Cause, ACLU, other political parties, and there's often opportunities for these democracy action teams to get training and connected with some of these larger organizations. So for the skeptics who are saying, well, this is probably not going to occur, I don't know whether we could do this, I think we just have to reflect that for UUs, we start book clubs and mahjong groups and bridge groups and men's groups at the drop of a hat that oftentimes meet weekly. And what we're saying is we need groups to be committed to learning and supporting democracy in the long run. So when we have our list of 50 things that people can do, we've organized those under these categories: how to get started, deepening their understanding, motivating family and friends, defending the democracy with your pen, speaking up and showing up, registering voters, working on elections, working for parties and candidates that are pro-democracy, and then using our dollars and resources effectively to lift democracy. And I'm going to just run through a couple things on that ideas. One is in getting started. Oftentimes people can do something on their own before they have a democracy action team. They can kind of make it their mission. They can schedule time, register voters, join pro-democracy organizations, sign petitions, create their own personal footprint, pledge to protect elections if they have that opportunity, or display a bumper sticker. These are all simple things that don't take time but get someone started. David Pepper asked the question, what have you done in your life to lift democracy, and what more can you do beyond what you're doing? And he makes the point that the first and simplest step is to incorporate saving democracy into your personal mission statement. So it's something like, should you choose to accept it, to make democracy a priority in your life, to decide what to invest in terms of time and dollars, and tell people of your new commitment, as it will make it real. So there's registering to vote, signing petitions, joining pro-democracy organizations, creating your footprint, putting a bumper sticker in your car. These are all things an individual can do before having a democracy action team to work with. A book that I recently appreciated was The 7 Democratic Virtues by Christopher Bean. He said that courage is, and this is his 7th, I believe it's his 7th virtue out of the 7 or 6. He said, courage is valued by every past and present culture. And he describes that as when people recognize risk but choose to act anyway, act such that they seek to preserve an ideal, a value, or a good. He says that's courage. And he makes the comment that Aristotle had said that courage was one of those things in the golden mean between cowardly and foolhardy, and courage sits right in the center of that. And political risks are real, he comments. The risk is that you could be wrong with terms of what you're advocating, that you risk making a fool of yourself when you stand up and speak. There's a risk of retribution for what you're saying, and there's a risk of ostracism for speaking up against your own tribe. So one of the things that I think democracy action teams do is they help bolster democratic courage among all of us. It takes courage to put up a sign, to display a bumper sticker, signing petitions, writing letters, canvassing, protesting. And courage grows with increasing threats to our freedoms. I think it grows when we're sparked by seeing abuse or injustice to others. And I think it's strengthened by having a supportive team. And one of the reasons I think it's so important that these small democracy action teams come together is to help people step up and demonstrate their democratic political courage. So over the next few months, our democracy action team, we're going to continue forming our democracy action teams at our local congregations. We're going to be engaged with You the Vote to see how it fits into our plan. We're going to join, we're planning to have a second presentation around the personal plan to help save your democracy, kind of part 2, going in more detail about these 50 things. And we recommend, and Fred will talk to you in a minute about the website we've created to support those 50 things. So I'm going to stop here and ask Fred to take over. Stop sharing.
Very good. Thank you, Dale. Dale's been one of our great advocates from Florida, and he's doing a great job there as well. Thank you, Dale. We're recording this, so you'll get a copy of this video, so you can have that to use in your congregations. And you'll also be getting a copy of the slides. So my name is Fred Van Duzen, and I'm the convener of the UUSJ Democracy Action Team. I'm going to be talking with you today about a couple of things that we're doing. So I'm going to put in the chat, I'm putting a link to a new set of web pages that we've created, Democracy in 2024 landing page, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. So this is the page, and again, the link to it's in the chat. We'll be sending it out as well. It's got a few things on here that are of interest, I think. First is the checklist that Dale was talking about. So we're going to give you basically a link to this checklist right here. And it's don't be alarmed that there are 50 things. Basically, people will just go through it and pick out the things that they want to do. So it's meant for everybody. You can choose as many as you want or not. When you get the checklist, you can actually, I'll show you some things on it, and you can actually click update it both online and by printing it out. So let me show you the details of it. So here are the 50 things. And those topics are the same ones that Dale talked about: getting started, deepening your understanding, motivating family and friends, defending democracy with your pen, speak up and show up for democracy, register voters, work on elections, support pro-democracy candidates, and use your dollars to lift democracy. And it ends with work your footprint, basically get engaged with it. Throughout this checklist, each one of these items you can click on, and it'll tell you, give you some information about that item. So for example, if you click on register or re-register to vote, it takes you to another page and it talks to you about what you can do in terms of voting. And all of these are links. So if you have questions on them, you can basically click on that and get information. And you can download this checklist by clicking up here on this down arrow. So you can do that now, and you can get the checklist. And if you use it on your computer, then obviously you can click on these links. But if you print it out, if you print this out on paper, then we've got this QR code that you can use. And if you use that QR code, it will take you to this page, which has the same items on it, but you can actually, so you could be working the checklist on paper in front of you, and you can have this on your phone if you want any questions. So however you want to do it, there's lots of ways to get into it. There's a lot of good information here. I think it's actually a good learning tool in terms of, like motivating your family and friends. One of the things we've got here is prepare your approach. And there is some work involved in doing that. So. So that's those pieces of it. And I encourage you to download it and explore it, and also give it out to your members of your congregation. I think it'll be a useful tool. Also here on our page, in addition to this checklist, we have a couple of other things. We've got resource materials. And here we've got a whole bunch of organizations that you can work with, a list. And again, you can click on these to get more details about them. And I think I've worked with pretty much all of them at one time or another in different ways. You're probably familiar with the Center for Common Ground, who does postcarding. Vote Forward does letter writing. I've done a fair amount of work with Next Gen America, which is they basically try and get young people to register to vote, and they have text banking, phone banking, social media, all sorts of things. We also have a list of videos, and these are videos that we've basically of events that we've done at UUSJ in the last several months. So all of them the speakers are excellent. They're basically about an hour long, but the speaking part is about half an hour. So these would be really good in terms of launch events in your congregation to show one or more of these, and then have a discussion about it and hand out the checklist is sort of our thought. My group at First Parish in Concord is thinking that we might do one a month, just have an event each month and then get people together. So I think it's a good way to kind of raise awareness and start getting people joining up on your democracy action team and supporting it. So I recommend the videos. And we have books, and a lot of the same people, obviously, since they all wrote books. Timothy Snyder is really, really good book and short in terms of on tyranny. And Jason Stanley does a great job with fascism. So lots of book opportunities, and also some newsletters. I highly recommend Heather Cox Richardson if you're not receiving her newsletter. She's a Boston College history professor, and she puts today's events in the context of history, and she's really good. So that would be the resources page. And if we go a little further down here, we have activities and events list. And this is something that we plan to keep up to date. And it's a listing of what's currently happening. There's not a lot going on right now, but this would give you places to go in terms of if you want to do postcarding. The Center for Common Ground has already started a postcarding effort right now. Got one going. Letter writing, vote forward is nothing going right now, but they're planning on it. There's a good chance that the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act will be introduced in the Senate this week, and we'll have an action alert that goes with that you can send in. Some things for next gen. Power the Polls has good information, and then events. We've got the You the Vote event listed here. And again, for videos, I've got the same 4 videos. So that's what we've got in terms of materials. Let me stop sharing. And I'll send you the links again in case you didn't get them. This is in chat, both for the Democracy in 2024. I also sent you a link to our email address, democracy.uusj@gmail.com.
Sacred space for us.
Yes,
So
that's where I was
that-
headed, Pablo. Thank you.
Oh, my bad then.
I do. I have a chalice extinguishing that that I have edited just slightly for our purposes this evening. And these are the words of Elizabeth Seeley Jones. She writes, "We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts, in all that we do, in all that we are, as we go forward from this place this evening. Go in peace."